council of the whole. Mr. Coyne will be here shortly. Mayor or Greg, I don't know if, I'm not sure, I didn't talk to John as far as what order he wanted to go today with this. Did we want to start with reviewing what Mr. Huber sent us, or?
I think that would be a good idea, Mr. President.
We have a draft for flying ceremonial flags that Jess gave me. I think that came from the city of Worthington, is that right?
Correct.
Since the time that Worthington passed that ordinance, there been some federal decisions that gave me concern with respect to the language that amounts to an across-the-board bar in terms of flying flags involving political speech or religious speech. This latest draft, I took that language out. I think that if this proposal is adopted, when you decide what ceremonial flags to fly, you can do that internally through discussion, arrive at a vote, decide what to do. I don't really think that putting that language in the ordinance adds anything in terms of your authority, and it probably makes the ordinance more subject to attack if somebody decides they want to, along the line of a couple of cases that are a little more recent on those issues. So I took that out, and I added language that requires if there is any ceremonial flag to be flown up on the square, it should be a flag that's purchased by the city council, so there's a clear, bright line that this is your decision, your speech. You're not accepting flags from anywhere else. This is all your authorized flag, and makes it pretty clear where the council stands if you do that. I think the last time we talked about this, there was some discussion about the fact that we lease the square. My thought with respect to all of that from the very beginning has been that if the council decides to adopt a ceremonial flag ordinance, makes sense to let the county commissioners know, advise as to what the thinking is, and if they want to weigh in, they can. They may not want to, but it's appropriate, I think, to at least advise them. And beyond that, anything in the lease, I would say, is not particularly clear in terms of who does what. It would just be good policy, I think, to let the county know what we're doing. And then if they have anything that they want to advise us, they can. So beyond that, that's as much as I have to say at this point. I think the issue then is whether you want to do this or not. And I think you've probably already voiced a lot of opinions that you have. I think at some point you'll just have to decide how you want to proceed.
Mr. President?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Huber. Ms. Hazeltine?
Thank you. In regards to the commissioners and the lease, I have already spoken privately to one of the commissioners about it, and they were very clear that anything on the square, the city leases it, and we are solely responsible for what we decide to do with it. I don't think it's a bad idea to open up a discussion about it, but I will tell you that the discussions that I've already had were very much like, we are hands-off on that lease. We do not control what goes on there. That is a city decision. Thank you.
Mayor Hanwell, did you want to?
Well, I just have some comments if you'd like me to start.
Sure.
First of all, sitting through the prior meetings, I think some are missing the point that diversity and inclusion are a two-way street, and there must be mutual respect for differing views. It can't be either accept our view or your view is wrong. And I didn't get that sense in the prior discussions. It was either accept everything that they wanted or all of a sudden we were the enemy. The fact that the city has already done a number of things to show inclusion and diversity and respect. We were one of only 25 cities in Ohio to pass the law when we did to prohibit discrimination based on LGBTQ in housing, public accommodation, and employment. According to the Outsupport local office, she mentioned that when she was here, Sandy. We changed our ethnic intimidation laws to just intimidation, which then included intimidation based on a person's LGBTQ beliefs. Both of those are much more protection legally than any flag or display is going to offer, and I think speak highly of what the city has done already. In addition to that, there have been a number of events on the square where flags have been flown by the parties using the square, as well as for the LGBTQ community, not only flags, but chalk art. We do that currently through the Uptown Park permit, and have not now or ever shown any obstruction or resistance to any of those efforts. I wanted to mention that I was thankful to one of our local pastors forwarded me some websites of the history and violence, including some deaths related to people with LGBTQ beliefs across the country. I had talked previously about the civil rights movement for human rights, but this gave me a little bit more information that I did not have. But back to the civil rights movement, that took place in incremental steps, not all at once. In fact, we're still taking steps. Many of you attended the Martin Luther King celebration, and one of the themes of it was that we're not there yet. We're still moving in that direction, and I agree with that. Some flags, I'm not going to limit myself just to a particular flag, but some flags aggravate, intimidate, and cause animosity with others versus inclusion and acceptance, which is what I think we as a community are striving for. And with such animosity being created, I feel that the government should stay in the middle and not be choosing one side over the other. Any of these flags may still be flown on private and business properties. Again, government should remain neutral in the middle of such issues to protect everybody's rights, beliefs, and philosophies of the differing groups that we have in the community. Another time, a suggestion was made that we follow the federal government on whether to recognize such issues or not. I prefer that we're a great community here and we set the standards locally versus depend on what does or doesn't happen in Washington, D.C. And watching what happens in Washington, D.C. is evident of why that is not the best idea. Greg talked about the wording of the lease, and I have talked to each of the three commissioners, and my position and their position is the Board of County Commissioners will make a determination, not an individual commission member, as to whether or not they feel it's okay or don't feel it's okay. The lease was for the city to set up a public park, which we did, and the fact that they still own the park, the square, it's the right thing to do to get their input. We also talked about Christmas decorations in the downtown, maybe not using those if the flags weren't approved. But this past November was the 38th annual Candlelight Walk in Medina. The main difference I see is that Christmas is a national holiday. Some of these flags that are are being supported are not national holidays. And for these aforementioned reasons, I would respectfully implore the council not to pass this proposed legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm late. We had a bowling match in Medina. I went a little bit over. They won, by the way, so.
Well,
that's a
thank
good thing.
goodness.
That's a good thing. But I'm sorry I missed the beginning of it, Mayor. I got your last half of it. I think that in order to be fully informed to make any determination, because everybody has varying opinions on this, what I would like to probably do is have the public give a little bit of their input. Now, if everybody has the same thing to say, have a group to, have a spokesperson. But if anybody would like to provide a little bit of input of what they believe, the rear microphones in the back. I don't want this to go on for 2 or 3 hours. I think we kind of get the flavor of what everybody wants, because we already had a few meetings in special legislation. But if anybody would like the opportunity to comment, now's your time. So if anybody would like to comment on it.
Mr. President, just one, do have one question, Mr. Huber.
Oh, I'm
On a
sorry.
comment that he made, that's okay. With regard to the, Mr. Huber, with regard to the council voting, if a suggestion was brought to council and we voted no for that, whatever that item is, could we be considered limiting freedom of speech if we would not?
It's government speech.
So your question is if this is a ceremonial flag
Correct.
ordinance. There's a few cities that have passed this ordinance. We're considering it. Your question is if we decide not to pass this, is that?
No. If hypothetically, if this passed and a suggestion to fly the Greg Huber flag came up, and we chose not to fly the Greg Huber flag, would we be held in limiting free speech? And Greg Huber could be anything you want.
I kind of like it.
I would like the Kimberly Marshall one.
Basically, this whole area is a gray area in the litigation. If the First Amendment rights are not clear-cut, it's an area that's still developing. So it's a possibility that somehow a proposal could come up and it gets voted down and somebody is upset and they could file suit, because that's how these cases start. And that's the best I can tell you, because as a result of this, have spent a fair amount of time looking at First Amendment law, which I find interesting. And across the United States, in the federal district and federal appellate court level, there are differing opinions on these issues. We have different judges who are coming out on opposite sides of some of these kinds of issues. To say that, no, we would never get into any litigation probably would be stupid on my part. And so I'm going to tell you, well, it's a possibility we could end up having to defend ourselves because somebody is upset. And this is a hot topic area. It's divisive in some respect because people have strong opinions about LGBT behaviors, and whether that's right or wrong, it brings out a lot of strong opinion both ways. And that's why some of the cases have happened so far. So that's the best I can tell you. So far, the cities that have passed this legislation have not been sued. And I think typically my advice is if the council acts with common sense, normally we're not going to get sued. So,
Thank you.
Mr. Lamb?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Two things. One, I disagree with your opening statement about the time limit.
John?
Mr. President.
I'm sorry.
That was you I was talking to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I disagree with the time limit. There's a lot of folks here tonight, and whatever their comments are, I don't know that, it doesn't look to me like there's an organized group. I think everybody should have an opportunity to talk and give their opinion, because exactly what Greg was just saying, this is a topic that, there are people on various positions on this, and it's something I think that we need to delve deeply into, make sure we make a decision that's going to not just be good for right now and maybe for this group of 7 people, but something that the next 7 people can work with and something that actually serves the purpose of the community. And I also want to know, going into this, whether or not we, all 7 of us, will have an opportunity to talk then as well.
Correct. We run this meeting like we run any other public meeting, and the time limit usually is imposed of 5 minutes, and I think that's fair. I think that we have to be consistent with the way we run meetings and give everybody the opportunity to speak, but again, provide an opportunity if there's a group. I mean, we don't want everybody saying the same thing over and over again, just like we say in our council meetings. And I do understand Mr. Lamb's comment, but I think I run meetings consistently, and that would be the way we run. So, I mean, I would like to hear the public first and then give us an opportunity to speak, because I think it's better informed if we know what everybody is saying. We have better comments, I believe. So at this time, I'd like, if there's anybody who would like to address council, if you would, you go to the rear microphone, state your
Mr.
name and
President.
address, and it'll be entered into the minutes, and we will discuss it from there.
Before we discuss, I just had a quick question from Mr. Huber.
Okay.
To clarify Councilman Rose's comment. He had asked about free speech. It's my understanding that this would be considered government speech.
You're right. If the council adopts a flag that you want to fly, and let's say it's the rainbow flag, you are given wide latitude because it's your speech. At the same time, that doesn't prevent litigation from somebody who feels like, well, you're doing this, but you're not flying my flag. And that's where some of these more latest cases have come up. And so to say that somebody couldn't feel, usually these things come up because somebody suggests they'd like to fly this flag, they bring something to council and they ask you to consider it. And if you do consider it, you're given some protection in the latest United States Supreme Court case if it's called government speech, which is what my memorandum deals with. The problem is that if you do adopt a ceremonial flag and then you deny somebody else their request, then that creates the issue, and whether or not that would result in a lawsuit depends upon how much money they have to spend. When it becomes the religious issue, the religious groups seem to fund money together, and they're a little more prone to file lawsuits on these issues because they have the money to do it, to be pragmatic about what I've seen. So, again, some of the cities have passed this kind of legislation, and there haven't been any suits against those cities thus far. I think that if the council exercises common sense when you deal with these issues, you're probably doing as best you can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions for Mr. Huber? Okay, does anybody else wishes to address council at this time? Yes, sir.
My name is Scott Jenny. Do I need my address and all that? 821 Dogwood Trail, Medina. To me, this is a pretty simple issue. And the issue is that you guys, in your position, are subject to special interest groups. However you want to say that, okay? If somebody comes to you, lobbies you hard, whether you agree with it or not, and gets you to agree to it and put a flag up, whatever that flag is, military flag, religious flag, any flag, pick a flag. That flag only represents one group. It doesn't represent the people of Medina as a whole. It doesn't represent our city, okay? And sitting here listening to this, it just sounds like this can continue ad nauseum, okay? Once we put up this flag, another group's going to want to put up another flag. Some people are going to agree, some people are going to disagree. At the end of the day, it doesn't represent everybody. In my opinion, the only flag that represents all of us, past, present, and future, is the American flag, period. That flag should fly. It should not be taken down unless it's faded, ripped, torn, and it should be replaced. Because we're all Americans, and that's it. I don't see how we can get out of this circular reasoning that's attacked Washington, that's attacked our country, that's attacked the world right now. We're Americans. We should fly the American flag and be free from all this stuff. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to make any comments?
John?
Yes, sir.
I just have a question. For the members of the audience, as you're addressing this, if you're against the legislation that is proposed, and again, we've all heard that, and we all agree that the American flag is the flag that represents everybody. I don't think you're going to have anybody disagreeing with that up here. But when if you're going to address it with that in mind, would you also just give your opinion, and it's just going to be your opinion, should we fly Christmas flags around the square? Or instead of calling the American flag is a flag, what we've been talking about are banners. But it's all going to be, as Mr. Lamb brought up at the special legislation meeting, or one of our meetings, the Christmas celebration. Just speak to that. Should it just be, is your feeling it should just be the American flag and no other flag, whether it be controversial or not? If you can just address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Yes, sir.
Scott Jenny again. Yes, in light of that, I think that was my point. Because we're getting into this circular reasoning with this flag, that flag, I think we should just say American flag and be done with it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hello, thanks for your time. My name's Tony Pellicino. I'm at 978 Lakeshore Walk here in Medina. And I'd like to say, first of all, I agree. If it gets down to the fact that we're going to fly the flag and we have to, in a compromise, give up on the ceremonial flags, I would agree with that. Because there's a difference between what's a ceremonial flag and what's a political banner, because that'll be your next, your next argument. Is a flag with a evergreen tree on it a Christmas flag, or is it just a ceremonial flag? Or is it a religious flag? I don't know. That's where you'll go with that kind of argument. So I think that we should fly the Stars and Stripes. It's been said, in and out, it's the most inclusive symbol in the history of mankind. There is no more inclusive symbol that it covers all of us. And I'd also like to add the point of, heard Mr. Huber talk about litigation and challenges. The city government has, we as residents want the city to be an efficient place. We want it to be a safe city. We want it to be run efficiently monetarily. We want the roads salted and repaired. We want the stoplights working. We want the police and fire paid. And to spend money fighting these arguments and these things, it's ridiculous. So I think even from a financial standpoint, it's prudent for the city to say, we're going to cut out that ever-ending cycle, and we're just going to go ahead and fly the American flag on the square. All other banners, all other causes, all other anything can be celebrated, demonstrated, spoken under the banner on the square, as is done all the time. We've seen it without end over the last couple years, and that is really what inclusion, and that's really what America is about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Is there anybody else that wishes to address council at this time? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name's Kurt Alber. I reside at 300 Forest Meadows Drive, and I'm the pastor at First Baptist Church in Montville Township, but Medina area. And the things that have been spoken earlier, I'm just going to reiterate. I think your responsibility as city leaders is to create an environment of unity And when we lift up symbols that bring everyone together, then that's where unity comes from in our community. When we elevate symbols that are exclusive or divisive, that leads to problems in our community. So I see two flags behind you that represent all of us in this room, and I think those are the ones that should be representing us. So I think a no on this proposal is wise and best for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was actually addressed everyone, and that's what we wanted to hear.
Anybody else out there that wishes to make a comment or address council?
Thank
Ms.
you.
Pastor?
Do I have 30 minutes? No, I'm just kidding. Good evening. My name is Pastor Ruffin. I pastor the Second Baptist Church here in the city, 451 Bronson Street. Ever since I moved here, I've been hearing that Medina is the place to live. It's such a great place. You want to move here, bring your family here. Most of you know, ever since I've been here, the main thing that I promote is unity. That pushes me. That does something. So let me take off my pastor's hat and talk as a citizen, if I can. I noticed that all the meetings, or the majority of the meetings I come to, we're going to always be divided. We are. We're not going to always agree. But I think what hurts me the most is if we don't agree with each other, we dog each other, we call each other names, we talk about each other, we walk out of here, we backbite each other, but we want to be a community that's united, and that doesn't work. So what unites us is being able to agree when we disagree, if that makes sense. My thing is, if I'm doing something that's going to offend my brother, I won't do it. I don't care how much I love it. I don't care how much I want to see it done. A flag is not going to define who I am. If I don't get to hang the Juneteenth flag, it doesn't make me who I am or who I'm not. I'll march around the square with it if I want to use it, but I don't have to hang it. We're always together when there's not division. And we have to learn that what divides us, we need to learn, how do we conquer it? Do we get mad at each other? Do we hate each other? Do we point fingers? Do we backbite? Do we say, you're no longer no good, you're no good? That's not the community that I want to be a part of. I want to look at people and say, hey, listen, we walk out of here divided, but yet I still love you. I still care for you. I won't talk behind your back. I just disagree. There are things that was voted on here that I did not agree with, but I did not hate nobody when I walked out of here. I was like, so be it. My name is still going to be Arthur. It ain't going to change. And I think we have to understand, until we get there, I don't think we really know what diversity and inclusion really is. Because me hanging a flag ain't going to make me be no more than who I want to be. I can be who I am with the flag, without a flag. I can be blind and still be who I am. So what I'm saying is, let's not make this flag thing as difficult as we're making it. It's not who we are. That's not. If it's going to cause us to get sued, people to point fingers, don't hang the Juneteenth flag. I still love you. I'll paint a flag on my house. You don't like the Steelers? So what? I'm still going to be a Steelers fan.
Oh, no, wait a minute.
Does that make sense? So what I'm saying is, whatever we believe, believe it. It's okay to believe it in your heart, but don't make everybody become what you are. I don't push my religion on people. I preach the word of God. If you accept it, hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. If you don't, I go home and pray for you. But I don't talk about you. I don't say, you going to hell, you ain't no good. We got to stop that, y'all. I got children that watches this. I got grandchildren that sit and watch this. And they like, how do y'all expect us to get along when y'all don't get along as adults down there? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? How about members of council? Who would like to start? Reggie?
I'll start. As I read this ordinance, I absolutely agree with you. We have a tendency to make more out of something than it actually is. And as I read this ordinance, nowhere in it does it specify any specific flag, any. In its simplicity, as it is written, I support this ordinance as I was elected to help make decisions on behalf of my constituents. I believe the council as a whole would act responsibly in making decisions as to which flags would be flown in our city. And having said that, I do want to read Section 2, Paragraph 1 of this ordinance. And it says, as used in these guidelines, a commemorative flag shall mean a flag that identifies with a specific historic event, cause, theme, nation, or group of people that the City Council chooses to honor, recognize, or commemorate consistent with the city's policies and priorities. And I ask you, how many historic events has our nation had? We've had a lot. We do have a long way to go to include people, to be inclusive instead of exclusive. But as I read this, nowhere in it does it specify any flag. And within the conversations that we've had here in this room, no one ever said we're going to take down the U.S. flag or the state flag. No one has said that. Thank you.
Thank you, Reggie. Anybody else?
I'm assuming everyone on council is going to be given the opportunity to speak.
Yes.
So I would like the opportunity to listen to everyone else before I speak.
Okay. Any future?
Yeah, I have mixed emotions. I mean, I agree with everything that Reggie said. In my almost 20 years of being on council, people get sick and tired, especially people on the dais here, of me telling the community to be kind to one another. And I truly mean that. I think that one simple act of being kind to one another can move our country forward, or I wouldn't keep saying it. I hope and I pray that it would become the norm. It hasn't. I'm going to keep saying it. I'm going to keep reminding people to be kind to one another. I just as much as anybody else in this room or on this dais, respect the American flag and think that that's the flag that should be flown on all public property. I agree with that. Where I'm struggling is as a lot of people on this dais, support the LGBTQ community. And I don't look at the rainbow banner as a flag the same as I look as the American flag or the state of Ohio flag. I don't look at it as a flag. I look at it as the city of trying to become more inclusive as our country to try to become a more perfect union. I look at it as that short period of time for people that have felt less by their community of this body being saying, no, you're not less. You are the same. Whether I agree with your cause of having a month or a week or a day for this, but I agree that I know they have felt less than normal forever. People have lost their lives trying to hide their sexuality. To me, it's a shame. So would I be against having a banner? Maybe it shouldn't be on the same poles that the American flag's on. Maybe, I think we could compromise, which I think is what is missing in our government, not so much the city, but the state and national government, is we've lost the ability to compromise, as Pastor Ruffin said. It doesn't make a difference how you actually feel, as long as you, I mean, how you feel about one argument. It's that you can still respect and care for the people that disagree with you. And hopefully in return that they could respect your opinions. So I look at whether it be the LGBTQ, the Juneteenth flag or banner, I look at that as something as helping people be recognized by our community as our equals. That's the only thing that I look at. Again, I personally don't think it should be flown on the same poles that the state or the national flag should be flown, but as a banner, which I consider, I think that for that short period of time, I don't have a problem with recognize either one of those. And I think Jess's recommendation, her request for council action of giving this body or whoever sits up here the ability to say, no, we're not going to accept your proposal of, as one gentleman said, being lobbied. And I'm going to give an example, a white supremacist group, a neo-Nazi group. I'm not going to support that. So I think that this body and the administration should have the ability to say, no, you're not supporting peace, love, and kindness. We're not going to grant you that time to put your banner up. Doesn't stop people from using their freedom of speech, as one person said, that they can march around the public sidewalks holding their whatever banner it may be. We can't stop that. But my wife and I, who's in the audience today, had an argument today, not about whether it should be flown or not be flown. It's just on the premise of how people feel and how we should feel about each other's opinions. I respect everybody here's opinion that says no banner or no flag other than the U.S. or the state flag. I respect that. I just happen to disagree. I would hate to see the city of Medina have to take down their Tree USA banners, their Christmas banners. I mean, to me, that, again, the Christmas banners, it may be a religious banner, but if you don't celebrate Christmas, that's okay. But a lot of people do celebrate it. So, I mean, I'd hate to see us take a step backwards just because somebody's against one group. And I know I've rambled on too long, but I'm sorry. Thank you. That's my opinion.
Mr. President.
Thank you.
May I make a clarification before anyone else
Sure.
speaks? And Mrs. DeZor, if you could make sure I'm saying the right thing. When you're speaking of the square and you're talking about banners and flags, those are two different things. The flags are what is flown on the poles, the flag poles. Banners are what are attached to the light posts, like when you see us supporting the Medina County Fair. Those are where the banners are flown. The flags are flown on a flag pole. So when we are using that language, it's important to distinguish between what a banner is and what is considered a ceremonial flag that's being flown on a flagpole. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shields?
Thank you, Mr. Coyne. From the very first meeting, I made it very clear the United States flag is very important to me. I referenced veterans, and I think I got corrected by somebody here on council that that shouldn't be my reason, but it is very important to me. And we have taken the American flag down several times over the years while I've been on council and put other flags up. So that has happened. Ms. Sarah, I did want to tell you that. And because that's how it first came to my attention the very first time for the International Fest, I had several veterans reach out to me and say, it's not right that the American flag were taken down for flags of other countries. So I do feel strongly the American flag should always be flown and always be on our flagpoles. I don't ever want to take them down for any other flag. I've been trying to think of a way for compromise, because I'm a person who tries to find the middle ground and represent all interests. One of the things I guess I want to propose, I thought of an idea. I looked at what a lot of other cities have been researching this a lot. What if we buy new lighting for the gazebo? And you can buy lighting now that changes color for any kind of event. You know, you see it at the Terminal Tower right now, but I found several governments that have lighting, and you can apply, you know, it's blue and yellow to support the Ukraine issue right now. It's red, white, and blue on the 4th of July. You can make it any colors you want that represents anything, and I think that's more in line of what we've done over the years when people have wanted to have a rally in the square, or they wanted to put ribbons on the gazebo. I can think of, you know, many, many different organizations, nonprofits, who wanted to hold a rally, hold a kickoff to an event, and they asked to put ribbons on the gazebo. And I thought, maybe this is a way that we could still represent interests, show our diversity, show our support of different causes, but maybe not have all this disagreement, and at the same time, still have the American flag fly at all times. I came through the square tonight coming here, the American flags are up there, and it made me feel really good to see those American flags flying on the square. I think it's so important that those are always there. But that's my idea for a compromise, or a different way to do this, to maybe take care of everybody's interests in a way that doesn't upset as many people too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Rose?
Thank you, Mr. President. I like that idea, Jim. I do. That gave me some thought. For those of you who have been to one or two council meetings, you've heard me say this before, and I'll say it again. No beating heart should ever be discriminated against in any way, shape, or form. My thoughts are with the majority here this evening, you know, and I agree that this is a two-way street. We do need to look for some sort of compromise, because diversity has many interpretations and nuances. We've got a diverse population with many demographics represented. We've got a diverse employment picture with manufacturing, education, commercial, retail, large corporations, small businesses, all represented here. Diverse religions throughout the city. You drive through the neighborhoods, you see a diverse representation of different interests. I look out my front door, I see the gay pride flag. I look out my back door, I see a gay pride flag. I drive down the street, I see an FJB flag. That's the way the city is. Everybody has their personal right to express themselves on their personal property. You look at our 4th of July parade, the large demographic that is represented in every marching unit, if you will, okay? But the one thing that does bring us all together every time is the U.S. flag. That is our uniting banner. I urge this council to continue to encourage the residents to continue to express themselves. Continue to express themselves on their private property, however they wish. You may not agree with it, but it's their right. Keep us all, and most importantly, let the citizens of Medina keep Joe Biden's promise to unite this country. Okay? And let's all, by flying the state of Ohio and/or the flag of the United States first, never take those down. And I like Jim's suggestion of some sort of lights, banners, or flags or ribbons, whatever, on the square. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lane.
Thank you. I have a faulty microphone. When you lean it forward, it goes off. So, thank you.
There's a
That's
reason.
cool, I got it, yeah. I got it, I'm cool, okay. I'm not cool.
No.
Thank you, Mr. President, appreciate that. It's interesting to me, I guess what's interesting to me tonight, as it was the last time we talked about this and the previous time we talked about this, and a few years back when the President Council and I think we spent about 2 years working on equality legislation, is how do we get here? how do we get to where we are tonight, that we're talking about the flag? And it always comes back to me that there are some things, Reverend, that, you know, I enjoyed what you had to talk about, but there's some things I think you really just can't find the compromise on. You know, I mean, Jim's talking about compromising, and I know that's a good way that we want to work. Being pragmatic and trying to find that middle ground, that's when we do our very best on most issues. But as somebody spoke, many of our issues are things about salting the streets, providing water, police, fire. Those are the things that we do. And in budgeting and in allocating employees, those things you can usually find a middle ground on. Some things I think you just can't find the middle ground on. I mean, there was no middle ground on drinking fountains for whites only. None. No middle ground on indigenous people couldn't vote into the 20th century. No middle ground. No middle ground on women couldn't vote. No middle ground. Some things I think you just have to say, okay, we need to make a good decision. I don't know that I've ever been lobbied to do something I didn't want to do. I've generally always been somewhat of a boat against the current on a lot of issues because I think it might be the right thing to do. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But I think this whole issue deserves a much deeper look into who we are ourselves and look at the word community. You know, the word community is about we share common values. We share common values. When we worked on equality legislation, hundreds of people showed up in this room and were against the equality legislation. That was not a sharing of common values. That did not, to me, describe community. When we first brought this, I think Jess first brought this issue up about the flag, the room wasn't quite this full, but every single person that spoke against flying that pride flag, and that we should only have the American flag. When I was mayor in 1982, we flew the flag of the Soviet Union on the firehouse on the square because high school students were here from the Soviet Union. And not one person raised a voice opposing that. When Main Street Medina had the International Festival, we had flags from all different countries, including Iran and Iraq, and no one raised the issue. And more recently, and I'm not really sure the mechanics of how decisions are made about what flags to go up to today, up to right now, but at the meeting that we had previously, it was expressed by council members and the majority of people here, only the American flag. And just weeks later, every single light post in the district and beyond, we got the trumpet flags. And I heard from not one person. I got not one phone call about why all those trumpet flags went up. The only time I've heard the issue ever get raised was about the pride flag. And so it makes me wonder, when the Reverend talked about what an accepting community we are and what a great community we are we doing that through performance? Do we have these things that we say we're bonded to? Are we just talking the talk, or are we going to walk the walk? I think we're talking the talk. That's what I think. I have a stepdaughter, an adult stepdaughter, who lives in California, has a partner. Grew up here, went to school here. She doesn't find this a welcoming community. I have a granddaughter who had a black boyfriend. He came to Medina and he looked around. He didn't find it particularly welcoming. Many of us have worked here for years in different capacities, always trying to make improvements, make things better, help people, be altruistic, give up a little of ourselves to help somebody else. And with this issue about LGBTQ and the flag, sure, flags generally, what do they represent? Nationalism, borders, those kinds of things. but simply a banner that helps people feel accepted. I don't see that that's something that is controversial, that you have to compromise on that. It's just trying to help some other folks who struggle mightily. And I think that's what this is all about. I think it makes me question how much we really care about everybody in this community. I've been here a long time. There has been one person of color on city council. One. And to my knowledge, one black person to work in the city hall building. One. And it makes me wonder, are we inclusive? So are we going to talk about things that we're being kind about as performance? Or are we seriously going to do it? We do a lot of things here that we could be sued for. We do it all the time.
Yep.
I mean, what the heck? Recently, City Council agreed to bring, deadly weapons into the community to shoot deer. No question that we could be sued if something happened there, but did it anyway. I don't think that's when you say, no, I'm not going to do it because I might get sued or we might have an issue. I do understand exactly what Mr. Huber's saying because I've taken a look at most of these laws, and I understand what the mayor's saying because we want to be together. We want to be that community of shared values. But I'm not sure I really any longer believe that we are that community of shared values. We just throw the word around. It's like Earth Day. Earth Day's nothing. We know that. Go plant a tree and dump poison all over your lawn so that nothing can grow there except grass. Can't feed any insects, no bugs, no bees, nothing. Earth Day is a commercial activity to promote businesses that probably are doing nothing for the earth. And my concern is if we agree and we fly the pride flag, we pass Jess's ordinance, do we really believe any of this? Or are we just flying the flag, just like corporations sponsor Earth Day? I don't know that freedom is really freedom unless you own it. If somebody else owns it, I'm not sure it's freedom. So I'm not sure I'll vote for it or not. I've got to think about it. Because sometimes I think some of these things that we talk about and we do, it's like smoke and mirrors. We don't really care. It's just a superficial thing. Because what I keep hearing back is, we're not all about equality. We're not all about inclusion. We don't really want to be altruistic. We don't want to help people, maybe. And maybe I've been wrong all these years. And I think that's a pretty sad thing.
Thank you. Ms. Hazeltine?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for speaking before me so that I could kind of digest everyone's opinions and what they thought before I decided to share my opinions. The first thing that I want to talk about is that, and I'm making an assumption, well, first let me say to Pastor Ruffin, he said we go around and we talk about each other and we name call. I'm certainly not, I never call anyone a name, I never do anything. But I will make this promise right now. This is how I live my life personally. This is how I live my life professionally. I have never said anything that I would not say to someone else's face. I would not. You can ask me anything in this room. Jess, did you say that? Did you say I was, I don't know, some horrible thing? Well, yeah, I was really angry when I said that, but I did say that. I will own every single thing that I do. A lot of people in this community watched me fight against that recovery center. And then a year later, they watched me direct it and help lead Serenity to the success they're at now. So I've learned that I don't speak about issues I don't know about until I educate myself. And that was a hard lesson to learn, and it was a very public lesson that I had to learn. But luckily, I was able to make the decision to inform myself about the issue before I opened my mouth. I am willing to bet that there are very few people, and I can tell, no offense to my colleagues, but a lot of you aren't familiar with what that flag is. You're calling it the rainbow flag, the pride flag, the LGBTQ flag. The original flag, the rainbow flag, as everyone is calling it, was developed, and it actually looked a lot different than what we flew on the square. And the difference is they added the triangle section, and I will tell you in a moment what that triangle section represents. The only thing different between the meanings, the colors, any of it, is that the original flag had a hot pink stripe that represented sexuality. Currently, the flags that were flown on the square in June, it's actually called a progress flag. And the red stripe represents life, represents lifeblood. I think all of us in this room are alive and believe that, that's important. Orange stands for healing. Now, I don't believe in God, and that's going to upset a lot of people, but that's how I live my life. And I appreciate every single person over the years that has said, I will pray for you. Because they believe in their hearts that that's the best thing they can do for me, and they're trying to be kind. And I say thank you. I will take all of the prayers I can get. All of the warm thoughts you can send my way, I will gladly accept them because you mean them out of kindness. Healing is something that this community needs right now, and it's represented on that flag. Yellow represents new ideas. This might be a new idea to a lot of people here in this room. Green is for prosperity. Prosperity can mean a lot of things. Most people think of it as wealth. I would say in this case, it would represent, as the name reflects, progress, prosperity, bringing great things together, making great things happen, like equality. The blue stands for serenity, a very special word in my heart, given that I did help Serenity become what it is today, and probably a lot of you there have dined there. And you probably had no idea that I was the face that started it. No idea. You might not even go there if you knew. So serenity. Everyone deserves that chance to feel that calm, that good feeling that they are at peace. The violet stands for spirit. And that can mean a lot of things, and a lot of people this evening have expressed that their definition of spirit is God. They believe in God, they believe in Jesus. That's their spirit. And that's great, and that's what that flag is representing, spirit. You're represented too. Just because you have, or anyone has equated it with gay, 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 that's all it means is gay. No, that's not all it means. The black and the brown stripes represent people of color. The white, the blue, and the pink represents the trans community. That is pretty much the only part of that flag that represents someone's sexual identity, their gender identity, wherever they happen to fall on this spectrum of choices. So I think that the progress flag is a little more inclusive than people knew. They weren't really, I don't think that anyone in this room would argue against representation of life, healing, new ideas, prosperity, serenity, spirit. I don't think anyone in this room would necessarily agree or disagree with those notions. I think we could all be united under those. But when you go to the black and brown and people of color part, we're still working on that. Now, there are people, and there are people in this room that were alive during the civil rights movement. And there were a lot of people that were, now we know, on the wrong side of history. They made choices based on what they knew or what they were scared of because it was different than them. Their skin color was different, it was scary for them, and they reacted out of fear. And that went on for a long time, and it still happens today. Again, this is something that I've said to people, and I'm not ashamed to say it now. When you look at people that are considered community leaders in our community, how many are black? A handful. That's it. Do you know how many black people live in my ward? A lot. Why isn't there more representation? We're not a diverse community because we don't feel welcoming to a lot of people. I've had people come here, and granted, I am not a black person. I have not experienced any of these things. I certainly will concede to someone who is black and has a different experience. But I've had several people come here and say, where are all the black people? There aren't any. Sorry. We don't have people that come up to the square that are black necessarily, because I don't think they feel welcome. The people in my ward don't feel welcome. They don't feel like it's a place for them. They feel like it's a place for white conservative people, and they don't identify with that group, and they don't want to be up there. And I don't blame them. But I hate to see any part of our community feel unwelcome to what we're so proud of, our square. I grew up for almost 20 years in Cuyahoga Falls. I never felt any sense of belonging to that community. You know, the first time I felt a sense of belonging to a community was when I moved into Medina proper. I love this city. I love everything about it. But Mr. Lamb is absolutely correct. When we look at our mission statement, are we representing those things? Or are we just saying that we represent them? Or we pass some legislation that's good enough? I don't really think it's good enough. Let's go back to the education thing. The mayor shared that he recently became aware of what I assume was Stonewall. To a lot of people in this room, I mean, I don't think that they would know what Stonewall was. That was basically those people that marched in a pride parade expected to be dead by the time they reached their destination. That's the level of hatred that has been displayed and continues to be displayed to the LGBTQ community. And if everything I learned in school and have continued to learn is correct, the black community was subjected to that treatment too, and they still are. Do we think that's okay? What makes a black person is just as different from me than an LGBTQ person. I'm not scared of them because they look different than me. I'm not scared of them because, you know, maybe they go home and they sleep with their wife and they're a female. Someone that brings them love. A lot of the responses, I feel, are highly based on religion. I have read every religious textbook I could get my hands on in my own personal journey to determine what I believe in, and I have never found anything that says, Jesus said, love everybody, unless they're black or poor or gay. No. Everybody means everybody. Is there a different definition of everybody that I'm not aware of? I don't think so. Everybody, no beating heart, should be denied the right to equality. Going back to the black community, which is, again, Juneteenth was the first time that we flew those flags. And as Mr. Lamb pointed out, nobody complained about those because we've made progress in the civil rights issue. How does progress in the LGBTQ community happen? Do people like us as leaders have to make hard choices and have hard conversations? Absolutely. Do we have to open our minds and our hearts to other people's opinions and respect them? Absolutely. But a lot of times that doesn't happen, and I'm guilty of it myself. You get very passionate about something that you believe in. But I'm willing to also make an assumption, again, an assumption, I'm aware it can come right back at me, that a lot of people probably didn't even know what Juneteenth was until they saw it, or they saw maybe like an article, or they saw the weekly news that had Pastor Ruffin and his wife on it. Probably didn't even know what it was. because it's different from them, and why would you learn about something that's different than yourself? I bet a lot of people in this room are not familiar with the Little Rock Nine. I don't see any nods in the room that says that anyone is familiar with any of the things that I'm talking about. And that goes back to, I don't speak anymore unless I know what I'm talking about. And this is something that I have studied from every angle. The Little Rock Nine were some of the first, black children to go to school when they put them together. Turned out that people who made that decision were on the right side of history. I'd hate to see Medina, who claims to be such an innovative city, such a diverse city, as displayed in our mission statement, fall on the wrong side of history. I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel pretty dumb about the way they treated black people once they realized it's just the color of your skin. It's not any different than the color of your hair, the color of your eyes. It's just all over their body instead of in one little tiny spot like your eyes. So again, we are forced to make choices that are sometimes, as the mayor has said, seem divisive. I would hope that the members of council, the members of the administration, the members of the audience would now walk away from here with a clearer meaning of what the progress flag means and just how inclusive it actually is. Again, a lot of the objections to the LGBTQ flag are religious. My religion doesn't belong on this dais any more than anyone else's. Religion, there's a reason for separation of church and state. And again, that's your private belief. You have every right to it. But we specifically stated that it does not belong in government. The LGBTQ community, it's not a religious issue. It's not. People are born with that. They're gay, they're transgender, they're born in the wrong body. I can't even begin to imagine the feeling of looking in the mirror and seeing a female face, of seeing breasts, of every time I used the restroom, seeing what I felt was the wrong part for me, the wrong body. Can you imagine being a child and having these thoughts and not just feeling so ashamed? And I imagine that when those Juneteenth flags went up, there were probably a lot of black children. I would ask for respect from the audience, please. That there were a lot of black children that thought, oh, other people know about Juneteenth. This is cool. Because I can tell you for a fact there were a lot of members of the LGBTQ community that thought, wow, Medina is really progressing. They are really trying. Yeah, I thought we were until this happened. I thought we were making progress with our legislation. I sit here because I want to see those important changes happen, and I want to be a part of it. I want that diversity to actually be something that we practice, as Mr. Lamb said, not something that we just talk about like our mission statement seems to reflect. The mayor has stated we passed the legislation. I would like to let the public understand more fully that the chalk art events for the last 2 years have been sponsored mostly by myself and OutSupport. And to be able to do that had nothing to do with the public park. I had to approach the police chief and ask him, can we write in chalk on the public sidewalk? And he said, yes. He said, you can write on, it's public sidewalk, it's chalk. Do whatever you want. Nobody ever invited us to the square and said, hey, you can use the whole square to celebrate, Nobody said that. They said, yeah, you can write on the public sidewalk. So I took it and ran with it, with the support of OutSupport, the Medina County Health Department, Hope Recovery Community. Those are all organizations that I think a lot of you respect. A lot of you have utilized the services of those organizations. It's not just me that feels this way. It's a huge amount of this community. And if you would take a moment to recognize that there are people that are different than you, and that's okay, I think you might have a clearer perspective on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. Mr. Huber, I just have a couple questions for you. After hearing everything we're talking about, I mean, everything's been focusing on really the flying of the flag, which was spurred by the fact of the flags that were flown in June. And I guess I'm a little confused. If we do nothing with this ordinance, what happens to all the banners and other flags that are around the city? Do they all come down? I guess, because we have an ordinance in front of us that talks about commemorative flags, and I assume they incorporate banners too. I have a little bit of confusion with the legislation of exactly, are we talking about the Medina County Fair postings that we do on the light poles right outside of City Hall? Or what do we talk, does everything come down except an American flag, and on no government property can any banner or commemorative flag or anything be flown anymore? I guess if we don't have legislation, what does that mean?
Well, I think Jess was correct. I think a flag is flown on a flagpole. And the banners, I mean, this is not anything that's been, as far as banners go, it's not anything that's been legislated. There's been any particular direction about it, so it's been a little bit of a free-for-all.
So I guess my question is then, if we do nothing and I guess there's confusion, I don't know what this means, all the light poles around the square and around City Hall and maybe in the parks and stuff, does everything come down from them? Or do we just say, well, nothing really happened, so we keep it there?
Well, as I recall in talking with Nino, this all started with putting up those bands that, we didn't used to have that, right?
The banners on the traffic signal poles throughout, we have 42.
Yeah, they didn't used to be around until not too long ago.
They did not. That started, Mr. Zur can answer that, when that started with the, I think with the bicentennial and then the celebration for the fair thereafter.
And there wasn't any direction about it. It just came about. And if you want to institute some direction about it, you can.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I think this legislation is more, in my mind, than just the LGBT community. That's what I'm trying to wrap my mind around, is we're talking about so many different things, but we're leaving everything out. We're all focusing on one specific issue, but the city's made up of so many different things. I want to make sure that if we do nothing, does all that disappear, or because there's no guidance on it, or do we continue with a free-for-all? But I'm in favor of some guidance on it, so maybe it's a good idea that this legislation be adopted, but maybe it needs to be a little broader than just talking about commemorative flags. Maybe it has to deal with the banners that we have on all the different light poles and things, because that's something that is different in my mind, and I'm trying to just figure out, we probably should address it because nobody's been talking about any of that.
So if I may, Mr. President, the American flags are on the street light poles. They're on the luminaires. They're not on flag poles. I just wanted to clarify that because
That's right.
the banners are all on the traffic signal poles on the corners of the intersections, and then the flags are flying on the street luminaires in the historic district that the city owns.
So there's a combination of things going on here. We have American flags flying on light poles and flag poles, and we have other things flying on all different type of poles. Anywhere where it's, I don't want to say convenient, but visible to fly these banners or flags or whatever you'd want to call them. But I think we need to have some kind of regulation governing all that, in my mind, and making a determination of how that's done. This may be a good start, but it may be incomplete with respect to all those different facets that we talk about, because we just throw out flagpole, and it's really not just a flagpole, it's a light pole that does this. So I think that we have to think about that and make a determination. But when we talk about all these different things, and we've been focusing on progressive, where we're going, who we are as a community, how are we united, how are we not united, and I think about this, and I've been thinking about this more, maybe because I'm getting older, I don't understand, but I think about these things and I reflect on things about when I grew up, what happened when I grew up, and I think about, we as a community go through life and experience different things, and I guess it's important how we react. How we react to things determines who we are. And going through high school, you notice, everybody's noticed it going through high school, either been bullied, saw people that are bullied, that goes on every day. Why does that happen? And I think about, when I watch movies, you start thinking about these things, and, I hate to start talking about this, but I think about it and I wonder, well, why does this happen? Why do people get picked on? Why, is it an individual person? Is it a group of people? Why are there why does this happen? And I come to one conclusion after watching this, and you may agree or disagree, of course, but I got this from watching The Accountant, and most people maybe don't watch that. It's kind of a violent show. But I watched one of the scenes they talk about. The one father was talking to his son who was different. And he was saying to his son, son, they don't like you or dislike you. You're different. And people are afraid of different. So that's why they're picked on. And it's either a person or a group. And it made so much sense to me that when you think about this, you go, when you look at yourself and say, well, why do things happen like this? And usually happen because people are different. Things are different than you, and you think about it and say, well, when things are different, people are afraid of different. People don't know how to handle that, and they have to come to grips with it. Whether it's in high school being bullied, growing up, different races or whatever. And it makes so much sense when you think about it. It's like, well, why do we do that? And it's human nature. And until we come to a realization of ourselves, we can never grow. And that kind of brings me all around to the city here. What are we doing this for the city? And we talked about the vision of the city. We talked about different things, but it's really, we have a strategic plan of the city. And when we look at our strategic plan, we have goals. And there's all different goals of what we want to be and what we aspire to be as a community and how we want to guide ourselves in the future. And you're never going to get there fast. It's always baby steps, and I understand that. But the goal is, where are we heading and how do we get there? We have to get there one step at a time, that I look at it as. And every decision we make on council here over the years has had that strategic plan in mind of where do we want to go. And the biggest strides we made is the square. The square used to be vacant. The square used to be more desolate. I remember coming to the square and there was nothing. And half the stores were empty, and it's like, well, why is that? What are we doing? We don't make it inviting, and we try to make it inviting. We pass legislation, we pass budgets, we made improvements to make things better. And I think this is part of it, because I'm a little concerned that as we go through this, if we do nothing, what happens to everything else in this community, city? We have all these different things going on. We want to have the bicentennial banners. We want to have the fair banners. We want to have these things. I don't want those to disappear. I mean, we have arguments over the flag, whether it's called the pride flag or the progressive flag or whatever it is. We're arguing over things that, hey, we're forgetting about everything else. Why do we focus on one thing so much? I think that they all come together and we have to make decisions. And I kind of think that we need to do something now, because I'm a little concerned about everything else that we're missing. And we are all adults, and we have to make decisions based upon what I believe is reflection of ourselves. And that's kind of a full circle going around to what the vision and the goals of the city are, but that's who we are. And I think I've been on council a long time, and I've been involved and I have seen many different things happen, but I think the city overall is going in the right direction. I think that, and Jim he's the second longest serving member of council. We've come a long way, and we have a long way to go, but I think things are getting better. Not everybody agrees with it. It's never going to happen. I usually always say, well, what's the best decision? The one where you make the most people equally unhappy, because evidently we're going in the right direction if that's the case, because no one group is winning. We're all moving in a centrist kind of way. So I don't know, Mr. Huber, I don't know what I said tonight, because I said so many different things. But I think
I agree with you, John. I don't know what you said.
But the
There is a
ordinance,
replay.
It's my understanding that nothing would happen. We don't have any law in place, so it would still be a
I think we
free-for-all.
need some guidance, and I think it's always important to have guidance. And I think this is a good start, but we need to incorporate different things with banners, because this talks about commemorative flags, and I don't understand. You have a definition here, but there's so many other things that need to be touched upon and addressed. So I think we need to focus on it a little bit more. And I agree that, Mr. Lamb said he doesn't know. I don't know. I think we need to pass something. I don't know if it's exactly it, but I think we need to have something that talks about these other items, because otherwise we're still doing a free-for-all, and that doesn't really make sense to me. So I don't know if anybody had, Mr. Lamb?
I do. Mr. Huber, I had a question earlier, and John, thanks for bringing it up, because it makes it, I think it's an important point. We have talked about flags and flagpoles and light poles, And in thinking back over the last 40 years, it's never been clear to me exactly when we decided that light poles were going to be, quote unquote, whether you call them banners or not, they were going to become flag poles. And that, to me, was the beginning of where we started to approach this issue. I'm not sure why, because generally, light poles like we have downtown, historically, never would have been flag poles except on 4th of July parade. That's when they might have hung something on them. But at some point, we put the bands on, and the place you could stick a flag. Like I said at the last meeting, my father, the fathers I knew growing up, 4th of July, Memorial Day, they got an American flag out, they put it up, they were patriotic, they fought in a war, and they put the American flag out. And then they put the flag away, and sometimes they got it out. They were patriots. They didn't have it out all the time. But this issue of lampposts and light posts, it seems to me that if we're talking about public display, it's display on public property. It seems like we have a lot of public property. So wouldn't a regulation have to include displays on any of our public property? I mean, how is it we display things on places that aren't light poles and aren't flag poles and aren't in the historic district? Who decides that? And wouldn't we want to control that then as well?
Well, I think the answer to that question is yes. If you're going to do it, you should probably have a regulation or something in place, because up to this point, there hasn't been any. I can't remember, or Nino told me how these bans got put on. What was it? Who asked for that, and how'd that happen?
I thought it was the International Festival. Does that make sense?
Medina,
Are you referring to the flag holders or the banners?
well, those bans were put on. That started it. Was that,
For the banners?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was with the bicentennial that and incorporated all the intersections.
okay. So there was no, this started because somebody thought it was a good idea.
The bans on the light poles went on during the International Festival because that was the first time they were putting up 50 flags.
Okay. And there wasn't any thought about any of these issues at that time.
Those are not bans. The bans are on the street light poles. The flag poles are on the street lights. The street lights around the square are where the International Festival flags were.
Right.
The banners for the bicentennial, for the fair, when Medina was awarded Best Hometown, those were all done with banners on the light poles, and there's 42 locations.
When you say light pole, you're talking street lights, meaning the
Not
traffic
street
lights.
lights, traffic signal lights.
Okay, traffic
Yes, sir.
signal.
Mayor, I just meant I meant the word band, like the band that holds the thing on the light pole. That's what I meant.
Well, I think we have
Isn't it a
bands
band?
even on the flag pole, right? To hold the holder for the flag.
Well, he's talking, there's a flag holder on the light poles, and then there's street light poles, which have the
Banners.
light signals
Right.
that you drive on the street. Those are the differences he's talking about.
The mast arms, we
The
call
ma-
them.
yeah, the mast
Yes,
arms, I guess.
yes.
That's what you're talking
So maybe it'd be a good idea if because I think, as you pointed out, this involves a whole lot more than what we have generally covered tonight.
Well, we've been focusing on one issue, and I kept thinking to myself,
Exactly.
why are we just focusing on this one issue? This is not the issue.
It's the
But
one
the
people are
issue
scared
It's
of.
the issue that brought this to a head, right?
Right.
So that's the issue, but we were so focused on it, we were blinded about everything else, and that's not how we have to look at everything, I think. I think we can't just look at one thing and make a decision based upon one thing. I think we have to make a decision based on everything. And I agree, council is probably the best arbiter of the decision because we represent the public. We're elected by the public. And we're going to change. We get voted on, we get voted off. So as time goes on, things will change. 20 years ago, it was different here than it is today.
I'm
20 years
just not
ago,
sure that, and I hear what you're saying, I'm just not sure, like I said, I'm not sure how I will vote when we do vote on this, because I'm not convinced that we are the best arbitrator for that decision of what you do put up and what you don't put up, because to me that, I don't know, it's a community thing. And so so to me, that's an awful tough call, because somewhere along the line, we do, whether we admit it or not, we have our own, kind of built-in opinions on certain things. And I have no issue with the things we've talked about tonight. But then we're also saying in a short period of time, the 7 of us aren't going to be here. And we can be really comfortable thinking that we're totally open-minded and we'll do the right thing. Other folks come here, I mean, to me, this is not a little step. And I do think that what we're talking about entails a whole lot more than flagpoles, traffic light poles, light poles, because when I look around the city, it looks to me like we have an awful lot of things in public display that would fall under this same ordinance.
But it has to have guidelines, and I think my point is, we have no guidelines now, but we should have some type of guidelines that can be changed, as time goes, because as time goes on, things change. Technology changes, and then you have different ways to project those items, and it's always going to change. So we have to have something in place, and I don't know what that is. Maybe this is a good start, but we have to add to it to talk about what are the guidelines of the use of public property. And right now, council is in charge of all public property, pretty much, together with the administration, that the city owns. So we could put the guidelines out there, at least there's a starting point of where do you start? And then from there, I don't know the answer. Who makes a determination of that? I don't know, but I don't want to make this more complicated than it is, but when I was just sitting here listening to everybody, I thought about all these things, and I said, we're not addressing any of them, and we should be. So, I don't know.
I'm going to suggest that the guidelines be pretty generic, because as you start to get more specific, then you're going to draw in the people that you choose to put a banner up, and you're going to have trouble with the people you deny. Right now, in this proposed ordinance, you've got guidelines that are actually pretty decent.
I agree.
If you read it, and in order to address
But we have to.
what you're talking about,
Right,
you just need to expand
right.
commemorative flag to cover banners and the other issues. I don't think it's that hard to fix what Bill is addressing if we go a little beyond commemorative flag. I know from working here and being on the inside that putting all this banner, flag, and whatnot for the service department is a first-rate pain in the neck. Those guys are out there, I mean, I hear about it, so.
I hear about it,
Just going to
too.
tell you.
I know, I understand, and I understand the somewhat of a burden, but I guess the real question is, what are we trying to accomplish? And I know the burden's there, I know the Christmas lights are somewhat of a burden, but I kind of like them, and I think a lot of people do. So we have issues, but we try to do things that are for the betterment of the entire community, and that's kind of what the goal is. Sometimes we don't, but hopefully most of the time we do, because that's what we're elected to do. So I think we should modify this a little bit and work on it. But I think it's a direction that we need to go, because we have nothing now, which is it's kind of scary a little bit, because there's nothing, and we need to have something. Yes, Ms. Hazeltine?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a few things. I agree, you're absolutely right. Nobody complained until it was the LGBTQ flag, because it's different and it's controversial. And that's how change happens. There's going to be controversy. Half the people
There
are
always is.
gonna like
Everybody
it.
has opinions.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we all agree, we all understand that. Yeah, we get
But
that.
regardless, my main 2 points were, I would like to hear what Mrs. Marshall was trying to say. And then there appeared to be 2 members of the public in the back, and I
We'll
was,
let them talk after
Yes, thank
we're
you.
almost finished with our discussion
Thank
first.
you.
But Mrs. Marshall?
Thank you, Mr. President. So pretty much what you were saying is what I've been saying as well, because after bicentennial, we've been using the banner brackets as a tool to market the city. So when we're looking at our marketing budget and our marketing, we try to pick a theme, and we run that across the board with our visitor guides, with our ads in Medina Magazine, and now we've incorporated the banners to all have that same look. So all of your marketing pieces for the city should have the same look. If we're going to modify the ordinance to include banners as an option for other entities, that's something that I want to know about, because
Well, I don't think we're talking about other entities. We're talking about city operations, because we don't have anything governing that.
Well, right, but what I'm saying is, like, it sounds like other entities may want to use these brackets for banners or flags or whatever. I don't want to spend a bunch of money on our banners, I think there's 42 brackets, or, right? So, and then if they're constantly going to be taken up, taken down for this thing, that thing, then that might be something that we don't want to do in economic development anymore, but again, it sounds like maybe now that it's being thought a little bit more, I just want you to know from our perspective in economic development, we use it as a marketing tool, like, hey, welcome to our all-American hometown, that kind of thing, so.
Which it should be. I think that the question
Yeah.
is, we're getting to the point where it's getting a little bit out of hand, right?
Right,
We're
that's
doing
the
it for
point.
specific purposes, and now we're saying, oh, maybe we do this too, maybe, and all of a sudden, we have no control over it because there's no structure.
Guidelines.
So we have to add structure to the process.
So last year, it was rough, because Barbara and I were talking about, like, okay, we got this request, we got that request. I'm like, okay, well, I want our all-American hometown banners up when it's, Memorial Day and 4th of July and whatever. She's like, well, you can't have it. I'm like, what do you mean you can't have? Like, to me, for the city, for the marketing, and it's no disrespect to anybody in the room or to council or anybody's ideas, thoughts, or opinions, but I just feel like the city, like, our role is to promote the city. So that, to me, and I could be wrong, but I just sort of feel like that,
understand.
we should be taking the lead. Like, we're trying to bring people in to support the businesses and all those things. So I just want to throw that out there, that if anything's going to be modified, that piece of it gets considered.
Understood.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Okay, ma'am, state your name and address.
Lisa Stair, Medina, Ohio. I got to admit that I take offense to the last speaker from the council. And the reason is because I feel that I'm going to speak on behalf of God. She doesn't have to believe in God, and I will pray for you.
Thank you.
But I feel like everybody in this room, they probably like cash. Right there on our dollars, it says, "In God we trust." This country was built on the beliefs of God. And I have read the Bible, Romans, the book of Romans in the past year, and it clearly states that we, as Christians, as people who believe in God, we do not celebrate a person who chooses to be gay. And that's just how I feel. I don't feel it represents all of us to put that flag up, and that is where I draw the line. And I feel like we're just getting into mucky waters if we're going to try to say, okay, we'll put this one up, but then we're going to draw the line and not let someone else put theirs up. It just could go on. And I agree with a couple of the gentlemen that have spoke earlier. It solves everything. We don't have to have the litigation problems, spending, all of that. Just go with the one that represents all of us. And, for those of you who don't believe in God, throw out your money.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Thanks for speaking. And also, I don't view you as complaining. I'm glad, I'm sure all of us are, we do want to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely.
These are tough decisions, we may not agree, but here's my question. When I was talking about the American flag, and my dad, who came back from World War II, and he put the flag up, that was it for him, right? He had a lot of other held beliefs. He had a business partner. I lived in an all-white community. His business partner was a black man. They were friends. They created a business together. He was kind of in the face of a lot of things that were contradictory, because he was in Kiwanis, it was basically all white men. He was a Mason that didn't let Catholics in. But he had this black guy was always at my house. I saw him a lot. He put the American flag up, and that was the flag he flew. But he did hold other beliefs. So when I hear you talk about, any flag, would just the American flag on a flagpole, because Kimberly, I understand what you're doing with Barb, but truthfully, having worked for I don't know how many years to limit the signs in town, which are fixed signs, and the fact that we have hundreds now, since things have changed, and more signs that all, in my opinion, and anybody connected it in any way to the creation of the historic district, they think they fly in the face of what that place should look like. I'm not a fan of all those banners. What if we just had the American flag on a flagpole? And whatever flag you want to have in a parade,
They can carry it.
you carry the flag.
Shouldn't represent the city.
What if it is just one American flag back on the flagpole, and let the traffic lights be traffic lights, let the lamp posts that we saved that were going to be torn down and replaced with Cobra head lights in the late 1960s like they have on freeways, let the lamp posts be lamp posts, and let it go with that.
I agree. I love it.
And not have the trumpet flags, not have all these other banners. We can celebrate Christmas or whatever we want to celebrate without all that hoopla, which is really just basically a distraction from the historic district.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
My name is Sandy Varndell. I live at 1014 Smoke Rise Drive here in Medina, and I'm probably the minority here in this room. But I do want to stand for the people I do stand for, my family members included. When my oldest was growing up, we always knew that there was something different about him. And we couldn't put a finger on it, my husband and I, what was different about our child. But there was something different, and I knew it, we knew it from birth, frankly. Through school, there were just ongoing stories about the bullying that took place at school because of our child being different. And I didn't know even what that meant at the time. Our child went away to college, and on their first summer break came home and told us that he was transgender. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. And I came to learn that it basically just meant that the messages that his head, or that his brain was saying with every fiber of his brain being, was that he was a man, but his body was saying differently. And I didn't really know what to do with that piece of information, but I knew that finally there was a name for what, for 19 years, we didn't know that there was a name for. I didn't know where to go for assistance. I didn't know where to go for an understanding of what that meant. So, as a licensed social worker that worked here in Medina and probably helped many of your family members and friends, I started a little support group, thinking certainly it'll just be my lesbian friend, my family, but little did I know that it would grow into meetings that took place with 30, 40, 50, 60 people coming to our out support meetings every month, month after month, on a school night in the middle of winter. The children would tell me this was the night that they looked forward to their whole month. They could not wait to be with the kids like them. And I came to understand that my family was not alone in this situation, that my family was one of hundreds and possibly thousands of families here in Northeast Ohio who were walking the same journey that my husband and I, my son, my transgender son, and my bisexual daughter were walking. And when I came to know that the support of other families walking through that was so helpful and supportive and life-saving, quite frankly. I would like to show you, I don't have them, but I do have them at home, letters from people who said that the only reason that they're alive today was because they had the support of a group like ours. So that may or may not be important to the Christians in this room, I don't know, and I don't mean to be sarcastic, but you might feel that maybe it's better that they would have committed suicide. I don't know. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But that's essentially the understanding of what the differences that people experience and the human condition. Now, when I say that, I also want to say that there are laws in the state of Ohio that say that it is perfectly legal to evict somebody from their apartment, their home, or to deny them housing here in the state of Ohio. It is perfectly legal to not serve coffee to a person in their coffee shop if they so choose to see that they are a gay couple or a transgender person. That's perfectly legal in the state of Ohio, unless a city or township or a village goes to the extra effort to say, no, that's wrong. It's wrong to kick somebody out. That's wrong to say you cannot be served. It's wrong to fire you because you're gay. That's wrong. And this city proudly, and I'm so proud to this day of what this city council did 3 years ago to make it safer for an LGBT person in the parameters of the city of Medina, along with 35 other communities around the state of Ohio. Not all of them, and certainly there's still laws on the books in most of Ohio saying that that's all still perfectly legal here in the state of Ohio to do those things. But in this city, in Medina, Ohio, you can't do that. You can't do that. That's illegal now. To deny somebody health care, to deny somebody employment, to deny somebody housing, to deny somebody public accommodation. So thank you, City Council, for doing that 3 years ago. Last summer, surprisingly, we were allowed to fly some pride flags. June is the traditional month for pride in this country, in the world. Much of the world celebrates throughout, you name the country, there is a pride event, and you name the city, there is a pride event. And one of the things that I've learned over these years was that when an LGBT person sees a rainbow, a progress flag especially, they are seen, maybe for the very first time in their life, and they feel welcome. If this city suggests that they are a welcoming community, if this city says, no, it's not okay for you to fire somebody who's gay, it's not okay for you to evict somebody who's gay, that says something. You're right. But what it really says to them is if you're welcome and they see for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, in the entire year, something that reflects who they are, reflects who they are. And alongside the American flag, they are Americans, they are veterans, they are Christians, they are perhaps sit next to you at church every Sunday and may or may not be able to tell you about that in their life. But what I think if you did talk to them, they would tell you that the progress flag means everything to them as far as being seen as a welcome member of their community. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't want to see the pride flag all year long on the square replacing all the American flags, no. But is it really wrong to ask that some aspect of a welcoming symbol to so many? I can't tell you how many people came to me and said, thank you. Thank you to the city. Thank you for providing the flags. It meant everything to me, and I felt seen. And the hundreds of children who live here in the city of Medina who are LGBTQ, whether you realize it or not, they were thrilled. They were over the moon in joy. in seeing their representation. So while I'm, like I said, I'm the minority here, I'm sure, but I am speaking for the hundreds of families here in the city. I'm speaking for the thousands of families in Northeast Ohio, and I'm speaking for the over 1 million the individuals living here in the state of Ohio who are LGBTQIA. So if you want to provide a welcoming community for a little bit of time in the course of a year, I don't think it's a bad idea to have some rainbow representation, and Progress Rainbow is the best way to do that. I thank you for your time, City Council.
Thank you,
Thank
Sandy.
Ma'am?
Hello, my name is Nicole Andrews, and I live at 229 West Smith here in Medina. And excuse me, I thought it was more important to be here than to dress the part, so I apologize. I'm really glad I came today. I haven't been to any of these meetings before, and excuse me if I'm emotional, but I thank you, Councilwoman Just, for explaining the progress flag. I hadn't heard that before. Medina is very diverse. I think one of the hard things about Medina is just not knowing. Things are scary to talk about, and the difference between religion and state, and people are there's a real fine line there, and people think they have to be on a side. It sounds like we're going to be coming to a place where we're maybe deciding on some places where we can amend something to go forward. And I read this, and there's just a couple things that I have to comment on. In section 1, it says that flags displayed on city-owned property shall be displayed in accordance with federal and state statutes and regulations, and I'm not aware of that. So I didn't read what that code, Ohio Revised Code section 5.012 is, but in further reading, if you go down to point 5 of section 2, it says, City Council shall only consider a request to display a commemorative flag made by a member of City Council. And Councilwoman Jess, you said yourself that the council is not very well represented in our community. Everyone's white, and everyone is kind of along the same page, and there's not very much diversity to bring to the table. And so it would be maybe a suggestion to allow people from our community to make those suggestions versus people who might not think of others, groups of people. The other thing that I read is that on point 9 of section 2, it says that the following are not allowed as commemorative flags and will not be considered by council flags of a particular religious movement or creed to avoid the appearance of the city government choosing religion or particular religious movement or creed. I believe in God, and God isn't my religion. I have a relationship with Jesus Christ, and it's not separated by state or government. It's who I am as a child of God, and I can't, if it hurts other people to be able to walk down the street and not see their flag, it hurts me that because I'm represented by a religious entity that may or may not be what I believe by the state, I'm not allowed to fly a flag either. So if we're going to become something that's truly inclusive, we have to be really careful about who we're not including. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Hi, I'm Debbie Catanzarito, and I'm from Medina. I wasn't going to talk tonight, but I heard Mr. Lamb say about his father. I'm going to start back 26 years ago my husband and I moved here from Maryland. The realtor didn't even want to bring us to Medina. And I kept saying to my husband, I've heard of Medina. I said, let's check it out. So when she dropped us off, we jumped in the car, a rental car, drove down to Medina, and we drove into the square. And I looked at my husband, and I'm not a real decisive, quick person to make a decision. And I looked at my husband and I said, we're going to live here. It was simple. The square was simple. It had the American flag. My father landed on D-Day on Omaha Beach. The flag means a lot to me. I have a brother who's disabled from fighting in Vietnam. The flag means a lot to me. It should mean a lot to everybody. The American flag. Why do we need other flags that are going to cause diversity? Why muddy that water? Why not just have the flag that represents, just like these other people had said before me, that represents America? And let them know that Medina is a city that lets you have a choice. It doesn't need to be ran down your throat that, you know what, this is a flag I'm flying because this is our agenda. Because you know what, you're going to leave some people out. So why put something up there that's going to cause maybe the city more problems? Why, like the other gentleman said, why be spending money on litigation to prove a few people's point? I love everybody. I'm a Christian, and I serve Jesus Christ, first and foremost. So it's amazing. It just, I'm not shaking anymore. But you know what? I love everybody. Everybody has their opinion. That doesn't mean I have to agree with it. They don't agree with mine, and it's sure impressive that we got a little lecture tonight on what some people's opinions are. And you know what? I came here to say, I don't care what flag it is at this point. Why cause diversity? Why cause people to be divided? Why cause people to go home and talk and say, well, you know, why not make it simple? Why not just keep it simple? And if you want to, on your house, fly whatever flag. I didn't come here tonight because it was an LGBT flag issue. I came here because it's a fly in a flag, and you're going down a slippery slope when you start letting special interests come in and say, I want this flag and I want that flag. Because who's going to choose? 7 people. You 7 people right now think that you're going to make the right decision. But what about the next 7 people that come after you? Are they going to make the right decision? Are they? So I came here tonight just to be quiet and to be supportive, but I wanted to know, I love Medina. I love Medina. This is my home. But when other people come in, they don't need a flag to know that they're welcome. There's laws and rules out there for all of that they're discriminated against that will protect them. But I don't think a flag needs to be flown when it's so diverse. It causes so much division. Let it be simple. That's what brought us here to Medina. A simple, pretty, beautiful town that I felt like everybody was welcome. It wasn't just picking out a certain interest group that says, okay, these people are really special. You know what? Everybody's special in God's eyes. And if they had God in their heart, they wouldn't need a flag to know that they're special. That's all I have, and I really would appreciate you just really thinking this out in your heart. We're not against them. We love them. We love everybody. It's not that we're against any particular group. But what we are saying is, don't put it out there to make people, to cause more anger between the different groups, because you're going to have that. The only way you're going to fix those groups, those issues, is to have Christ.
Sir? David Mast, 150 Walnut Drive. The one thing that I just wanted to stress is that, you know, there's a difference between acceptance, inclusion, and respect versus celebration. And I think that that's where we have a problem. you know, a flag represents something that people are all about, they're passionate about, they're celebrating. And when you put up flags around the square, we're saying that as a community, this is what we're celebrating. And everyone has a worldview, deep-held conviction, something that they hold deep down that they believe. And so if you're going to put a flag up saying that we're supporting this, you're obviously not going to represent the population as a whole. And I'm a lifelong resident of Medina. And, you know, I just don't think that that's who we are and that we can say who we are by putting a certain flag up. Certainly, we respect, you know, everybody in our community. We love them. And, well, if I probably go any further, I'll get off on a rabbit trail. But that's kind of what I wanted to say is, you know, there's no question about respect and appreciation and acknowledgement even of every person in this community, whatever their beliefs and so forth. But to ask us to celebrate and to join in is not something I believe that we should be made to do.
Thank you. So to try to wrap up the meeting, does everybody, I mean, we heard a lot from the public, we heard a lot from various, every member of council. Do we still want to move forward with trying to put something in place that governs banners and governs flags, governs the use of public property? I think we need something because we have
Yes.
nothing right now. And
We need something.
We need something to give some guidelines of what to do. Otherwise, we just do nothing and just anybody do what they want. I mean, I don't think that's the appropriate decision to have. We need to make a decision as a group to govern all those, you know, the banners, whether it be the fair, whether it be bicentennial that we had, and, you know, the marketing pieces that Kimberly talks about. So I think we need to work on that, and I guess we could work with Mr. Huber on that, Mayor, and try to make some guidelines for the use of all that. And then, you know, what we were given so far is pretty succinct and short, which I think is important. I think if he's correct, if you get too much into the weeds, you lose your direction. So I don't think we want to do that. So, yes, Mayor?
Yeah, I think what he has here is a baseline. If you would like to expand on it, what I'd respectfully request is that you individually email him thoughts, or if you'd rather, I think you all use email. He not so much. But we can print them off and give them to him. But in any event, in all seriousness, that then he can take those collective thoughts, put together some amendments to what we have currently, and then we'll continue the discussions and try to get to a place that hopefully there's some agreement with.
Sure, I appreciate that. Okay, anybody, you want last question? Anybody have last?
Go ahead.
Okay. So what are we talking about are we talking about taking a look at this ordinance to see what suggestions we have to rework parts of it?
Yeah, I believe so.
And we're not talking about passing it tonight then?
No, we're not
Okay.
passing it tonight. I
Okay.
don't think we're in a position to
Okay,
do that.
I mean, I think that we need to take a hard look at exactly how this is, because particularly for me, it is about who makes the decision, and that we really take into account the other things that this would entail, because it's important that that we have a guideline, but that we don't leave things out. So I think we'd be much better suited, I think, if we do what the mayor was talking about, what you're talking about, then to go back and take a look at it again and see if we can make those adjustments and come back and get something more workable.
Yep. Mr. Rose?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank everybody for being here and for your comments. It was obvious that for a few of you, it was a struggle to go up there and speak in public, but thank you for taking that courage.
Okay, with nothing else, then, this meeting is adjourned.